When disaster strikes, we usually expect the final outcome to be pretty nasty. But if these cases of unexpectedly amazing outcomes are anything to go by, we may have reason to be a little more optimistic when life deals us a bad hand. Get ready to have some faith in the universe restored as we explore some terrible accidents that turned out just great. Number 10. Like a glove. Take a look at this white car attempting to overtake a little too enthusiastically on the left. It was at this point he knew he effed up. Driving at that speed perpendicular to traffic hardly ends well, but the car had different plans. Yep, he was just parallel parking. Let's see that again.
Like a glove.
As impressive as the ending is, I wouldn't recommend trying it as the big finish to your driving test. Number 9. Total disaster. A lead actor getting injured while filming a movie can cost a production company millions, so usually every precaution is taken to avoid that scenario. But it's less easy to factor in the chances of an actor getting hurt during a seemingly harmless scene. But that's precisely what happened to actor Viggo Mortensen while filming The Two Towers, the second installment in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. Mortensen was filming a scene in which his character, the heroic Aragorn, is led to believe fellow adventurers Merry and Pippin had been captured. In a moment of total despair, Aragorn kicks a helmet, screams, and falls to his knees. On the day of shooting, director Peter Jackson had shot the moment 4 times, and each take had been better than the last, so he asked Mortensen to give it one last try. He did, and Jackson got the take he wanted. But it turned out that final scream was so gut-wrenchingly convincing because Mortensen actually broke his toes kicking the metal helmet. Luckily, he stayed in character, and the unfortunate incident helped create a truly memorable scene. Number 8. Salty Chef. Chips, crisps, vague non-specified potato snacks, whatever you call them, there's no denying potato chips are one of the most popular junk foods on the planet. But their origin story is one of passive aggression, backfiring in a totally hilarious way. While working at a New York restaurant in the late 1800s, the appropriately named Chef George Crumb found himself with a difficult customer. Crumb became frustrated when the patron repeatedly sent back his french fries, complaining they were soggy. Crumb, salty that his culinary skills had been called into question, decided to teach the customer a lesson. Crumb sliced the next batch of potatoes super thin, fried them to a crisp, then doused the thin strips in salt. To his surprise, the complaining customer actually loved the result of Crumb's passive aggressiveness. That moment would go down in folklore history as the first serving of potato chips. Though the actual origins may actually have occurred a little before Crumb's invention in another part of the US, Crumb's story is the best of the bag. Though potato chips are no longer sold freshly made, they can be found in stores on almost every street in the civilized world. This may well be the only story where offending the person that handles your food actually turned out great for the customer as well as the rest of humanity. Well, snack-wise anyway. The whole obesity thing, not so great. Number 7. Drinking the stars. In the 16th century, a French Benedictine monk named Dom Pierre Perignon spent his time off making delicious wine in the Champagne region of France. For winemakers in this period, the lack of ability to regulate the temperature of fermenting wine, besides storing it in a cold basement, presented a number of issues. While making a batch of wine, a cold spell of weather could halt the fermentation process, and only when the weather warmed up again could the fermentation continue. But with this stop-start change, wine bottles would often fill with bubbles of carbon dioxide. Often this could lead wines to literally explode out of their bottles, starting a devastating chain reaction with the other surrounding bottles. Dom Perignon was no stranger to this and knew that spotting bubbles often led winemakers of his time to discard entire batches. Yet when Perignon spotted bubbles in a batch that survived one particular year's stop-start temperature changes explosion-free, his reaction was a little different. As legend has it, he tasted his sparkling, tingly creation and called out to his fellow monks, "Come quickly, I'm drinking the stars!" While a little-known English winemaker had successfully produced sparkling wine 3 decades earlier, Perignon produced the first of what is now officially recognized as champagne. The beverage, by definition, now has to be specifically produced in the Champagne region to qualify. Dom Perignon spent the rest of his life perfecting the formula, which soon became a global sensation, and the Dom Perignon brand was later named in his honor. This is one accident worth drinking too. Cheers! Number 6. TRANSFERWISE. When an Estonian called Taavet Henrikus was working in London as a management consultant in 2008, he was initially very pleased to receive a bonus of £10,000. Interest rates were higher in Estonia, so he decided to transfer the money from his UK current account to his Estonian savings account to earn more from the cash. He made the transfer, but noticed a week later it was considerably less than expected. The UK bank had given him an awful exchange rate, taking a cut for themselves, as is the common practice, and he'd lost £500 because of it. He angrily vowed to come up with a way of transferring money overseas that removed banks from the equation. So, beginning with a network of friends who transferred money informally between themselves, he helped form a company called TRANSFERWISE, which shared the service with the world. Now the company is transforming financial services globally, and it all started with a single annoying dilemma. With that level of ingenuity, maybe banks should try to annoy Estonians more often. Who knows what could come out of it? I like TRANSFERWISE so much, I actually use it to make payments with my team from around the world who helped me create the videos for this channel. TRANSFERWISE saves us a lot of money on exchange rates compared to PayPal and banks. I found they're up to 8 times cheaper than banks. If you'd like to save sending money abroad, give TRANSFERWISE a go. And support the channel by signing up for TRANSFERWISE using the link down in the description. Number 5. HeLa. In 1951, medical history was unexpectedly made when the cervical cancer cells of an African-American woman named Henrietta Lacks were collected by her doctor. When examined by researchers, they realized that Henrietta's were the first ever human cells that could survive and self-replicate indefinitely outside of the body. This development revolutionized medical research, as it allowed for consistent testing of treatments for things like cancer. Sadly, Henrietta died shortly after, never able to see how much good had come from her own body. While many scientists built careers and fortunes off HeLa cells, neither Henrietta nor her family were asked for permission to use the cells. Worse, Henrietta's family weren't even told about them until the 70s, and they never saw a penny of the many fortunes the cells amassed. The only involvement Henrietta Lacks had was that the revolutionary HeLa cells were named after her. But despite the unfortunate path the story took, HeLa cells have saved countless lives. They even helped in developing treatments for the very cancer Henrietta died of, among many other developments. I guess the moral of the story is, if you're gonna breach someone's privacy, do it for the benefit of humanity. Number 4. CLUMSY COSMONAUT. Despite meticulous planning and projects as huge and complex as Marvel movies, mistakes are bound to happen. Normally, such mistakes don't make the final edit, but this was not the case in a particular scene in James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy. In the scene, Chris Pratt's character Star-Lord offers a metal orb to the Collector, unaware of its true power. But during filming, while Pratt, whose clumsiness is as famous as he is, was handing over the orb, he accidentally dropped it. He quickly stumbled to catch the orb and offered it up like nothing happened, adding humor to an otherwise serious scene. The bloopers suited Pratt's character so much, director James Gunn decided to leave the take in the final cut. Number 3. The Last Laugh. When nitrous oxide was first synthesized in 1772, it was initially seen as little more than an amusing party trick that could induce short-lived euphoria and giggles. But in 1844, an English dentist named Horace Wells came upon the idea of using laughing gas for tooth extractions and surgeries. The idea came after he witnessed a man intoxicated by the gas receive a nasty gash on his leg after banging it on a bench. The man didn't feel a thing, and once he sobered up moments later, didn't even notice his abrasions until they were pointed out. The next day, Wells asked a colleague if he could pull out a rotten tooth from his mouth while he was knocked out by the gas. Feeling no pain, Wells knew he was onto something. Unfortunately, Wells's attempts to mass market the gas were marred by unsuccessful demonstrations, and he became something of a laughingstock amongst his peers. Despite the difficulties Wells faced, he got the last laugh, albeit posthumously, as nitrous oxide eventually became one of the most widely used general anesthetics in the world. And to think, it all started with a giggling man and his grazed knee. Number 2. Master of Waves. In 1945, American engineer Percy Spender was working on a project for radar company Raytheon. While testing the radar equipment, which used high-frequency electromagnetic waves, he noticed the chocolate bar in his back pocket had melted. He realized that the microwaves emitted by the radar equipment were responsible for his pants' suspicious-looking brown patch, and started experimenting, cooking items such as eggs and popcorn kernels. He adapted his discovery by using a metal box to trap and concentrate the microwaves to even greater success. After Spender successfully cooked many items, Raytheon filed a patent for the process. And just like that, every chocolate lover's worst nightmare changed home cooking forever. Needless to say, it's a much better outcome than if Spender had had aluminum foil in his pocket. Before the number 1 spot, here are 2 honorable mentions that, while not quite as epic, are still fantastic outcomes to bad situations. First up, this worker takes a tumble that leaves him hanging around. He could have been stuck there for a very long, uncomfortable time had a passerby not stopped at just the right moment. Before long, he's back on his feet, and while the two may never meet again, neither of them will forget this moment of hilarious yet heartwarming human connection. Next is an incredible blunder captured in a lower league soccer match between Juventud Unida and Defensores de Villarreal. When Villarreal's goalkeeper loses possession of the ball in a dangerous position, his team fears for the worst. Lucky for him, man's best friend comes to the rescue with an outstanding save. Sign that dog up. His talent is through the roof. Number 1. Hyundai's Invincible car. In 2012, strong winds led to an empty shipping container on a truck falling onto a Hyundai Elantra in South Korea. Despite this seeming like a recipe for a gruesome end, no one was injured, and the Elantra held up impressively well. Strangely enough, the container had Hyundai mud flaps, making the whole scene seem like some bizarre twisted advertisement. While this was not actually the case, the narrowly avoided disaster still made for some fantastic PR. Hyundai proudly posted the image on its official Facebook page, and honestly, I don't blame them. It quickly went viral with many people commenting on how strong the car was. After all, nothing says structural integrity like a car capable of bench pressing a shipping container. A similar case occurred in 2014 with a Kia, where the occupants miraculously survived and were even healthy enough to give a thumbs up. Of course, the Kia did not fare as well as the seemingly invincible Hyundai, which was only made to look better by the two disasters. Have you ever made a mistake that later had an unexpectedly amazing outcome? Let me know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching.